Hello, welcome. In case I didn't say it this morning, let me just reiterate. Welcome to Anatomy and Physiology 2. I am Professor Young, and this is WIMBA. If this is your first time listening to a WIMBA session, I hope you find these sessions to be beneficial. Sometimes, like today, I will add in extra information. If you remember, there was no chalk in the room, and there were some things I wanted to write down. Couldn't write them down and didn't want to dictate them to you. So we will include them within this presentation here. If at any point in time you have any questions, please feel free to jot them down, and once the WIMBA presentation is done, go ahead and zap me an email. I'll be sure to get back to you. Also, it's good. Remember, you can pause the presentation at any point in time. You can go back. You can fast forward, if you would, by clicking on a specific slide to only hear the presentation that's given on that slide. So you have a lot of flexibility and capability with this system, and I hope you find it beneficial. And if there's any way I can improve the sessions here online, please feel free to shoot me an email and let me know, or come to me before or after class and we can discuss that. And as always, questions are welcomed and I don't want to say expected, but encouraged during lecture, because we all can benefit from that time together. AMP2 starts off with a discussion on the autonomic system, and it is truly a tale of two different sides. As we discussed in lecture today, we have both the parasympathetic system as well as the sympathetic aspect to the autonomic nervous system. And what we will do first is discuss the parasympathetic. We will discuss the parasympathetic nervous system. Sorry, I didn't realize that slide was going to pop up next. And discuss how it is used and controlled within the body, and then we'll move on to the sympathetic, and then we'll conclude our session today with that last diagram that shows all of the neural pathways associated with the autonomic nervous system. So here we have the parasympathetic nervous system. Remember, we talked about the fact that the parasympathetic nervous system is really a system of down-regulation overall, if we think about this. Our parasympathetic nervous system will crank its impact up during or after eating. So for digestion, of course, this would be also relaxing, sleeping, anything that requires a level of reduced cardiovascular output or reduced activity. The parasympathetic nervous system will be in control. Keep in mind, and I said this during lecture today, I want to make sure everyone is on task with this. We've got something that is referred to as the autonomic tone. And autonomic tone simply puts into perspective for us how the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system is going to function. When the parasympathetic is quote-unquote in control, that means that its effect on the body is the more predominant features that we're going to see. It does not mean in any way, shape, or form that the sympathetic aspect of the autonomic nervous system is completely shut down. Never within our body is one system on and one system off. Both the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems function jointly with one another. They're both always on. It's just whose features are more predominantly being displayed at what given time. And we consider that ability for both of these opposites working together to help to maintain and regulate homeostasis within the body as autonomic tone. And so parasympathetic is going to help to regulate our gastrointestinal tract, our GI tract, as well as our urinary system. It will downregulate, if you would, the muscular system. And what that really means is that it's going to restrict the amount of blood flow going to our skeletal muscles and redirect that muscle or redirect that blood flow and subsequently the oxygen and the other energy, minerals, and things like that that are transported through the blood that we'll get to. It redirects that into the digestive area, into the gut area, if you would. And that concentrates the energy of the body in digesting the food and reabsorbing or absorbing the nutrients that we can gain from that. Usually, typically, heart rate is lower here. Respiration rates are going to be lower here. Everything slows down. We brought up the fact that, back in the day, Mom would say, no, you can't go swimming. You just got done eating. You got to wait an hour. Well, in light of our understanding of how the parasympathetic nervous system works, this makes sense, as we discussed this morning in class. It makes sense because we are, the capillaries have these tiny sphincters on the ends of them that either constrict or open up and dilate the blood flow. During parasympathetic control, if you would, if we can use that term, what we see happening is sphincters are constricted, going to the muscles, reduces the blood flow. Blood flow is then redirected and the sphincters open within the gut, within the gastrointestinal tract, and that redirects that blood flow. Lack of blood to the muscles means a lack of oxygen. Lack of oxygen means the muscles, if you are exerting them, have to find another way of producing that energy. How does it produce it? Well, it typically produces it through anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration, as we talked about in AMP1, will lead to a buildup of lactic acid. Buildup of lactic acid due to a lack of blood flow, removing the carbon dioxide, removing the acid from that area, causes cramps. And so Mom was right. It's good to digest your food for about a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour at the most, before you go and you do anything that is strenuous where you're going to be overexerting your muscles. You don't want your GI tract and your muscular system competing for the same resources. So kind of keep that in mind the next time you're out and eating and all that kind of good stuff. One of the other things that I do want to also mention here is something that is referred to as sympathetic tone. Now, what sympathetic tone is all about is a maintaining, if you would, a maintaining of blood pressure through vessel constriction. And this might actually come up blue now. Yeah, it did. Through a sympathetic tone is a maintaining of blood pressure through vessel constriction. We talked about this. This makes sense. We got to regulate blood flow. We block off the majority of the blood vessels going to our skeletal muscles and redirect that blood flow to the gut, which helps to stabilize blood pressure. Otherwise, if we opened everything up and we had blood going everywhere, you're going to reduce the amount of overall blood within the system that's concentrated, therefore leading to a decrease in blood pressure. And that would be a bad thing. And so that we don't want. So sympathetic tone is a process that helps to maintain blood pressure through vessel constriction. Constrict off the majority of the vessels, redirect the blood to the gut, maintain the blood pressure throughout the whole system. Something else that came up during lecture today, and it was one of those things that I was trying to flush out for you and have you get a really good grasp on, and that is that when we talk about parasympathetic nervous systems and the way that the nerve system is structured as such, if you would, one of the things that we can see very characteristically within the parasympathetic nervous system is that the nerves arise from the brain and the sacral area. And so when we look at this diagram coming up on slide 5, I want you to pay attention where the nerves arise from, where they originate from. And someone in lecture did point that out as one of those characteristics when I was asking you to describe the differences between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. That's a very distinct area. You can tell right from the brainstem, the majority of the nerves are arising from. So that would be the brainstem, as well as, and I'll clarify that a little bit more for you. Brainstem we are referring to, and we are referring to S1 through S4. All right, so that would be the sacrum, sacral vertebrae 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the other thing that we can characterize the parasympathetic nervous system with is, and this was one of the other things that I wanted to have you all point out, and the majority of you did just fine with this, and that is the nerves themselves have a long preganglion fiber, and then they have ganglion, which, as you should recall from A&P1, is a large bundle of nerves. And lastly, they have a short, and this might get cut off a little bit, my apologies for that, but a short postganglion fiber. And so most character, and that did get totally cut off. Let me retype that for you. And they also have that short ganglionic fiber. There we go. That's better. Right, so when we typically talk about the nerve relay leaving the brainstem or the sacral area, we're going to notice that very long preganglionic fiber. You're going to notice that ganglion bundle, and then that short postganglionic fiber going into that target tissue, which typically is going to be smooth muscle. All right, smooth muscle is going to be more so regulated by the parasympathetic nervous system. I will throw this in, although I'm going to be less concerned about this, but I will throw it in. You are responsible for it, but it's not going to be anything biggie. And that is the simple fact that really there are 4 nerves that we are dealing with coming out of the brain. And these are the 4 nerves that are most associated with parasympathetic. And that would be the oculomotor nerve. That would also be the facial nerve. The glossopharyngeal nerve. And I think you're starting to see why I didn't want to just dictate this all to you today. It just wouldn't have been very fair. And then we also have that 4th nerve being the vagus nerve right there. All right, and then consequently, the vagus nerve is actually responsible for about 90% of all the parasympathetic activity that is going on. All right, and the other 10% comes from all of the others. All right. Sympathetic nervous system is going to be just the opposite. It is very commonly referred to as, and I will make this correction here just because someone will probably say something, fight or flight response. All right, so in the moment of crisis and excitement, do you stay or do you go? And typically those responses are going to cause the sphincters within our digestive system to constrict, which is going to then move that blood flow out to the skeletal muscles, as well as cardiac output and respiratory. But you're going to see that widespread control switch to the sympathetic nervous system. So we have increased cardiac and respiratory rates. We have increased blood flow. Again, as I said, decreased flow to the GI tracts and the kidneys. Here, the hormone control is going to be global, long-lasting. All right, and that is key. You know, it takes a while because of this global action of the hormones. It takes a while to calm down after your sympathetic nervous system ramps up. There's a term that we will discuss more. Trust me, that we will discuss more of in the next chapter. But there's a term called paracrine. And what that term is usually referring to are hormones that act locally, not very widespread action. And hormones that act locally typically have a very short circulating life, and so they don't last long within the circulatory system or the system at all. And that is important because if you're digesting food, and as I said in class, if T-Rex is coming down the road, you don't want your digestive system you don't want your body to be worried about digesting that chicken sandwich. You want to worry about your body responding to the T-Rex and getting your butt out there. There's no question. You're not going to stay and fight T-Rex. You're going to have that flight response, and bam, you're going to be out of there real quick. And so therefore, the hormones that oversee the sympathetic nervous system are global and long-lasting because you don't know how long that you're going to need to have that flight or fight response. And so therefore, we typically see global, wide, long-lasting control within the sympathetic nervous system. And the main hormones that are going to be involved with this, norepinephrine, epinephrine. You're also going to see acetylcholine as a precursor, especially for epinephrine, play a role in this as well. And we will get to that eventually. Chapter 17 will be here before you know it. One thing that I will say in addition with the sympathetic nervous system, and that is that the sympathetic nervous system tends to have shorter preganglionic fibers, and therefore it's going to have longer postganglionic fibers. And then, of course, in between the two of them would be the autonomic ganglion or the sympathetic ganglion that would be there between the two. All right, so that's your sympathetic nervous system. And then we have the final where we ended up today, and that was this lovely little diagram here. You'll notice down at the bottom, right down in here, you've got your little legend and key, and so that we can see that the solid line is sympathetic, and so when we look at this, basically this side right here is your sympathetic, and the left side over here is primarily your parasympathetic. How can you tell? Well, let's take a look. If you go back and then let me just first point out, here are your ganglionic bundles, or your ganglionic fibers that are right in here. All right, and if you take a look to the light blue or the left side, you will notice that you've got this long, I'm just going to trace one of these bad boys, but you've got this long pre-ganglionic fiber, and then you've got your integrating center. That again is located right here. Why isn't that working for me? I don't know. There it goes. And then you've got a very short, if you would, ganglionic fiber that's going to lead right into that target tissue, which in this case, again, remember, smooth muscle, it's going to be within the lung. And then on the flip side of that, let me just clear everything out here. On the flip side of that, you've got the right side, which, as we mentioned again, would be the sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system being characterized by this short preganglionic neuron, and then you've got, again, your integration center right there, and then this longer postganglion. Now, in the case of this guy here, I picked a bad example. There's another integrating center because of how many different structures it goes to. But you get the point, and it makes that case very well. Notice something I did not mention here. Notice that the sympathetic nervous system, again, short neurons, automatic ganglion, and then the postganglionic are longer neurons leading away from the central nervous system. But notice with your sympathetic nervous system that the nerves tend to exit through lost my thought here. Hold on one second. Your first thoracic, I don't know why I totally lost concentration, and your through your second lumbar. And so again, if I'm just pointing this out to you, that would be right in this area here. So you've got T1, there's your first thoracic, second thoracic, third thoracic, fourth thoracic, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, all the way down to the 12th thoracic, and then your lumbar 1, lumbar 2, and so on and so forth. And so you can kind of see that deviation there with that. All right. Hopefully this clarifies a little bit more about what we were talking about today in lecture. Again, if you have any questions, you need anything clarified, please do not hesitate. Shoot me an email. Jot down the question. You can ask it Thursday in lecture, or confer with somebody else and just make sure that I'm not going crazy or you didn't miss something. One last little final word before I send you guys on your way, and that is anything that is presented either here on the WIMBA or in class is fair game for a exam question. Just because it's in the book doesn't mean it's going to be fair game. So if I present it, it stands a equal chance of being assessed. If I don't present it, it's not going to stand a chance of being assessed. And so keep that in mind as we go through and you're reading through the book and wading through that and the information that I'm giving you. I hope you had a good first day. Thank you for coming along on this journey of Anatomy and Physiology 2. And again, I'm here for whatever you need. Don't hesitate to ask. Have a good day, and we'll see you later. Happy studying.